Today we're exploring the Goldilocks Principle, the idea that things work best when they're not too much, not too little, but just right. While it comes from a fairy tale, this principle has real power in education because teaching isn't about getting it perfect, it's about finding that zone where learning and teaching can thrive. Let's dive into the well.
Welcome to the Eduwell Podcast, a show created for, by, and with teachers. I'm Alex.
And I'm Chelsea. Our goal is to share insights and connect with fellow teachers on how to thrive both personally and professionally.
Join us as we dive deep into the well of information filled with relatable tips, practical discussions, and ideas that go way beyond the classroom walls. Let's be well
and do well together.
Well, all right, let's start with the basics. The Goldilocks Principle says that something must fall within certain margins, not too extreme, but that just right. In teaching, that shows up everywhere, in classroom management, in lesson planning, even in grading. If we go too far in one direction, too rigid, too loose, too complex, too simplified, we risk losing effectiveness. The Goldilocks zone is about calibrating, constantly tweaking, and adjusting to meet the needs of all the students where they are. We're going to walk through a few key areas of teaching and talk about what we think works best, what hits that just right spot. Chelsea, I've got to be honest, this is a really tough one for me. I am an all or nothing person. If something works really well for me, I try to do it all the time, and then it gets out of balance and either students get bored or disengaged, let's say. So this is something that I have to be mindful of personally within my own practice. Like if something works, put it away for a little bit, bring it back later. So that nice happy medium.
I think it can be tough to find any Goldilocks spot, that sweet spot that you want to keep going all year long because of the way that the teaching cycle fluctuates, that the kids change, that you change, there's moods. Back to the calendar episode, there's weather, there's events, there's all kinds of things that are just coming at you throughout the year. So it's really hard to keep your just right lessons, your just right methods in place just because there's so much up and down and so many things coming at you.
I did not even think of that. You're absolutely right. So an example of that came to mind when you were speaking was, sometimes the students get too comfortable. You've given them more freedom, you've entrusted them, and it just gets to be too comfortable. And then to adjust the classroom back, you have to go to a level of structure that's a little more than necessary just to reset. So with the ebbs and flows that happen with all the different areas that we're managing, what is a Goldilocks moment one week might not be the same next week. So it's a moving target. And we are just chameleons as teachers.
That's it right there. Things are always changing and fluctuating. So let's talk about specifically classroom management, getting it just right. Do you think you've ever gotten it just right in any of your years as a teacher?
Well, you said years, within moments within the year. Yes, I've had beautiful moments, and I call those unicorn moments. And they're there for a little while, and then there's something big that happens in the school community, or we've had too much independent work and it can be disrupted really quick. And so you look forward to the next unicorn moment. And I will also say this, that the bar for a unicorn moment, depending on the class, depending on the year, is different, right? Depends on the class that you have. What about you, Chelsea?
All of these just right moments do depend on the class that you have. And when it comes to classroom management, it just makes me think of you can't have the sweet without the sour. So I think it takes time to get your techniques down. Most importantly, I think it takes time to get comfortable. And I think that when the teacher is comfortable, then the students are comfortable. And that makes all the difference in the classroom. But like you said, you don't want the students to be too comfortable. And sometimes that can happen. And that's when you do have to take a step back and put a new strategy in place. But I think experience plays a role here, because if I'm thinking about being a beginning teacher, when you're managing a class, you're trying to make it just right. You want everybody to follow the rules, and you want to get all your curriculum done, and you want to do the just right projects. But you can become overwhelmed with that and really focused on that, and you're not focused on what is the class dynamic and how do you want to direct that dynamic. There were some years where I tried to really have this great classroom management, but it would fall flat. And then I had to learn from that by getting more comfortable and figuring out my own techniques and my own style. So I think that's how you can find your sweet spot, by finding your style and your comfort levels in a classroom. And that is something that takes time.
Well, funny you say that. And I remember when I was new to the profession trying to emulate everyone else personally. Like I was looking at how my colleagues did it and I wanted to be just like them. But their style was for their personality and they were comfortable with it. And in doing so, I was denying myself the Goldilocks moment of I'm comfortable. So, I mean, that's not even one of our points, but it's a really important point is finding where your comfort levels are and how you want to be as a teacher. So you're working within a comfort level. And of course, you got to push out a little bit of your comfort zone too. But
I do think, though, that that still happens, the comparison. Even being, over 20 years into teaching, I think I've got it all down, especially with the classroom management, and I'm comfortable in my class, and I think it's going very well. But then I'll see someone else in their classroom, and I will say, you know what? I'd like to try that. I want to use that technique. I want my classroom to feel like that. So that is part of the profession. There is that comparison thing, but sometimes it can be a really good thing. Sometimes it can get you back out of your comfort zone because you've gotten too comfortable as a teacher, and maybe you need to change it up a little bit or add something to just improve your own teaching.
I know for me that the things that I fall into is I'm either being too strict and I notice that the students, are not as willing to take risks. And I would say they probably feel a little bit stifled if they like a lot of freedom. And the other thing I've fallen into is getting too lax. And then the room feels chaotic and unstructured. And I find that there's less learning when that happens. However, when I find that unicorn spot, I find I'm giving clear expectations. They're responding to them. We're sharing a good level of mutual respect, and it ends up being a safe environment for learning.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. Like, you do have to try these things to figure out what is working. Just like Goldilocks trying all the porridge, you have to try it and then you can find your own sweet spot.
So what tips would you give to a teacher to reach that, like kind of actionable tips?
I feel like I am always working on this, and it depends on the class that you have. It's pretty personal, but there is being firm but kind. There's boundaries, but also paired with empathy. So we talked about explaining boundaries in our boundaries series. So really explaining to the group that you have why you're putting these boundaries in place goes a long way. It really helps your class understand that you're doing this to foster respect or space or time in your classroom. We've also talked about creating structure, but also having flexibility in the classroom. That's another thing that helps students feel comfortable and helps them to have a voice. And then, of course, knowing your group. So connecting as much as you can. And that's not always easy. You have a lot of people in the room, and knowing what the class needs. So do they need tighter routines? Or does your class really thrive on autonomy? And that all depends. The way that I manage one class is completely different than the way that I manage another class. It's a real learning experience and it's a real process. Keeps you on your toes.
Well, I swing back to my friend who says that you are a conductor. So there's the percussions, there's the woodwinds. Is that what they're called? There's the horns, there's the electric guitar, there's the all the strings, right? And if everyone's just plucking strings and playing instruments, it's a noise that brings extreme stress, and it's not fun to listen to. It's not a space you want to be in. But if the conductor can manage to see the strengths of each instrument, follow the notes, the structure, there's an ability to create a beautiful noise, beautiful music, not noise, music. And when you're in that space, it's really beautiful. And as the teacher, you are the conductor. And every year you're playing with a different band, a different instruments. And that's my visualization for the day. I think I have a visualization issue because I always need to share a visualization. But when you're talking, this is what I see.
I wouldn't call it an issue. It's a gift. It's a gift. That's a good thing. That makes complete sense. Comparing the class to a symphony. It's just a symphony.
It's a symphony. Yeah.
Okay, let's get into the second topic, which is the use of technology, which we've become so good at, haven't we?
Oh, we have. I mean, that was a gift of the pandemic.
Yeah, true. And this is another tough one. You can have too much technology, which means over reliance on screens or tools and of course distraction. You can have too little technology, which means missed opportunities for engagement or accessibility, and you can have just right, which is strategic use of tech to enhance but not replace instruction. This is ongoing. I mean, what do you think?
Well, I mean, I'm thinking back to, generations that have been through the system who had no technology, or let's say very little technology. And I'm thinking from a teacher perspective, they didn't know what they didn't have, and they experienced teaching without this add-on. So I just want to be mindful of the fact that this, I don't think, was a major topic in the past, and it is a major topic now, and it is an add-on. So if you want to talk expectation inflation, we've had to learn all these new technologies, adjust all these technologies, learn how to articulate to the students how to appropriately use these technologies, integrate these technologies into the classroom, and then contend with all the massive issues that come as a result of using these technologies inside the classroom, outside of the classroom, in society. And so, wow, I'm just hearkening back to a simpler time. And clearly we love our tech, Chelsea. Like, we do a podcast, we use many devices to bring this to life. It is such a double-edged sword. And I love the point about, the missed opportunities if we don't use them. But I'm very mindful right now about the problems that it has introduced into the classroom. More so right now in this exact moment that I am excited about the opportunities that it has created. I don't know how you feel about that.
Well, I do get pretty excited about the use of tech in the classroom. I definitely think that it enhances learning. I can't speak to having cell phones in the classroom. Like, we have never had students actually have their cell phones in the classroom. That's not permitted. And so I think that makes it a lot easier for us. Whereas someone who's teaching in a school where cell phones are permitted all day long, which I guess isn't supposed to be a thing anymore, can make it incredibly distracting, difficult, and absolutely would not enhance the learning, but take away from it. As for using certain platforms and apps, I love that. But I will stress that I only use a few apps now that I have gotten to know really well, and then I've helped the students to get to know. Because I've had this hour where I've tried to, incorporate a bunch of new learning tools with tech. It just gets messy, and it just all adds up and it becomes too much. So to find the sweet spot with tech, my thing is to stick to one or two. Like, for instance, I'll use WeVideo in my class all year long because that platform has all of these other little things that you can do in it that enhance learning. And I'll start off slow with just like a themed video. No pressure. You just have to make a themed video about gratitude. And then from there, we build on that persuasive speech with sound effects or video storybooks, things like that, that can all be done within that one piece of technology. It is important to just note that if you focus on using something that you know that you can help the kids to know, and you don't worry about all of the other stuff that might be coming in and it's getting filtered in through your email, then you might have a better experience with the technology, and same with the students.
So the best experience I've had teaching with tech has been when it's a gradual release and the tech is used a bit in the process and a bit in like a project-based learning ending time. And it's focused and really explicit. And we had, at the time, we'd used Apple computers, and we made podcasts based on some learning that we did. And there was learning about how to use the program. And then there was also learning about the topic that we were working on. And then there was oral language, and it was amazing. But
Yeah.
looking back to that, it was so many years ago. It was over 10 years ago. there wasn't all of the extra distractions on the computer. Like there wasn't the gamification that the students can now access. So they had the ability to just focus on the task at hand. So I think that's a big piece of it, is the focus. If it's focused on, what you're intending to achieve, as the teacher, as the student body, that's a really positive thing. But if it's a distraction tool where there's a whole bunch of entertainment options also available, then it's problematic. The opposite of that is, let's say, never allowing the kids to be on the computer. I mean, obviously that's not helpful, but that's the piece that I think is the most problematic right now, is the distraction. And yeah, I'm not sure how to solve that. And I wish that I was more articulate on this. It's such a dynamic, and there's so many different points that when I've engaged in conversations, people bring up really, really solid points. But ultimately, it's important that I, as a person, or students, are able to sit down and focus on one task at hand, because as you know, we really can't do more than one thing at once. And if you were to choose between working on something that the teacher wants you to work on and going on the game that you might feel a little bit pulled to because it gives you that little hit of dopamine constantly, that I often lose out in that equation, I feel.
Agreed.
I mean, I'm exciting. I can be interested. And as I'm saying that, I'm thinking people are going to think, well, you need to engage your students. Well, sometimes I just really genuinely, even on my very A-ist game, even, I can't compete with that.
No.
So, I mean, I think we've talked about the two, polarized, what's the happy medium?
Well, you have to have some mix of analog and digital. Paper and pen still has value, but it's professional judgment. And I think it's personal to every teacher. I don't know how to answer that.
I think you're absolutely right. Like if you are very well versed and you're finding success using technology all day long, then yeah, you have the professional autonomy to be able to do so. I just know for me, I'm mindful of, and it's dependent on the grade that you teach in the class that you have, but I have just found that there's a high level of distraction. That said, a lot of that could be mitigated by boundaries, right?
Yeah, and that goes to the classroom management. There's an added expectation with the classroom management when it comes to the technology, and that's another thing that's personal to the teacher. And we have to figure out how to balance that and how to manage that in the classroom. I know I have some new ideas for this year based on what I've experienced in the past. So again, it's that looking back and looking forward to really figure out what your sweet spot is going to be.
I think what makes this the most complicated for me right now is that with the use of AI, I really want to know what students can do independently. And so I know for me, this is something I'm going to have to learn more about and learn how to leverage correctly. I'm really going to have to find my Goldilocks moment with tech this year. It's going to be a challenge, and we'll see. We'll swing back to this one. I would like to talk about this again, Chelsea, because I don't feel solid on this one right now.
Okay, well, we'll leave it at that.
Okay, what about teacher talk? Let's look at this in the context of the Goldilocks theory. There's talking way too much, being up in front of the class, talking, probably not asking a lot of questions, very lecture heavy, the students depending on you to do the heavy lifting and becoming very passive learners. Then there's, of course, the talking too little, lacking in the amount of guidance or modeling or scaffolding that one might do to get students engaged and give them the tools that they need to be able to move forward with next steps. And then there's that just right, beautiful Goldilocks moment where you find the balance between explanation, interaction, and lots of student voices. So I don't know about you, but I weave in and out of these, and sometimes deliberately. Like for talking up in front of the class, I try to break it up a fair bit. I do, but sometimes I have to set the tone or give a fair bit of information to start with. And if I start throwing it out to the learners right away, then I lose my own flow. So I ebb and flow in and out of things. But what I can tell you with confidence is when I hand it over to the students too much and I don't do enough talking and enough setting of the table for the learning, sometimes it just becomes all over the place. And the students really crave that guidance. They want that just right. I find when I am finding the just right, my class runs smoothly. And that is where I probably find my most Goldilocks moments, is in that process of the learning where I'm taking turns leading and volleying it out to the students and letting them kind of back and forth and then send it back to me. That's where I find my Goldilocks moment. How about you, Chels?
Yeah, that's teaching right there. Ultimately, for me, in the grade that I teach, in the time that I have, my just right talk time is 20 minutes, no more than 20 minutes. But let's say I have a 100-minute block with the students. I will spend time talking and then go to activity, and then I will spend time talking again. So breaking up the talking, right? You can also find your just right amount of talking in that longer period of time by breaking it up a little bit. But yeah, there are days when you need to speak for more than 20, 30 minutes. It's very dependent, but I do sort of follow that research where, attention span, especially at the age group that we are working with, is about 15, 20 minutes. And then I, of course, think of myself, or think of yourself at a PD session. How
Mm-hmm.
long do you focus for? How about those days where you are listening all day? It makes you think about your students.
It's painful. And it's not about the presenter, and it's not about,
No.
the content. It's just very hard to sit all day and not have times where you get to expel energy. But you made a really good point kind of about it depends, and that goes to reading the room. Like I'm sure you've had days where there's been something that's happened that you need to address, and it's time for you to be a leader. And the students are looking for you to be a leader in that moment. And you can tell because they're all sitting and listening attentively in a way that's next level. And you know that stance I'm talking about. Not one of them is disengaged. And you could talk for 50 minutes straight. And I'm sure you have done it when you're discussing something serious or discussing something really important. And so depends on the situation in front of you, what it's calling for in that moment. And when it's serious, the students will often rise to the occasion. So
Not only serious, but really engaging or really exciting or really fun. Then I
oh
can go
yeah,
for
of
50, then I can
course.
talk for 50 minutes. But and reading the body language, well, there's an easy way to find out if you need to stop talking right there. You can
Right.
see it. You can see the shoulders slump. You can see the head tilt back. You can see the yawns.
Looking at the
You can see
clock.
it.
You can.
Yes.
And the thing is you like responding to that is really important.
Yeah, it is.
And also sometimes not letting that drive. Like here's a quick opposite experience of that, which is that sometimes students are doing that deliberately because they want to get on the device back to balance, and they're just sending you signals that they're bored because they want to be running the show. So there's some real interesting dynamics that we deal with as a teacher.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
All day, every day.
Let's talk about connections with our students. And this is something that we've talked about a lot on the podcast, is the importance of being connected with students. We've also talked about boundaries and finding that balance between connecting with students, but not getting too comfortable or letting your boundaries down too much. So in the Goldilocks context, you can be really distant from your students. And what this looks like is, when a student wants to tell you something about their life and tell you about their weekend, you don't create the time for them and allow for that opportunity to connect. I would put that under the too distant. And then there's the too familiar, where you're at risk of having the student see you more as a friend. And that can be impactful when it's time for you to set a major boundary with the class, because you're seen as a buddy, not as someone who is, in charge. And then there's that nice happy medium where you find that professional rapport that's respectful, but you can also have that kindness and that warmth with the student. I find this one challenging because sometimes you're having fun with students and you could joke around and you can, let's say you have a games day, and their mind and in your mind, you've had that good connection. And then sometimes you have to get back to, I call it back to business basically, and you have to reset. That's really hard to do if you haven't established that happy medium where you have boundaries and you still have set the tone that you're the person who's in charge. So that to me, that I'm always very cautious to not get to that zone where it's too familiar.
Well, I think that one of the best things you could do is set the stage at the beginning of the year. So that means discussing expectations and boundaries with students and helping them learn how to switch gears depending on the situation. And we're always modeling it and reinforcing it. So it's just that constant communication piece.
It sets us up for success when we communicate what our expectations are. I mean, I've had students call me like their best friend before. And honestly, that is the sweetest thing. And I have to, and I always do. And, listeners might think, oh, you do what? But I do. I'll say, I'm your teacher and you will only have one, grade 7 or grade 8 homeroom teacher. And that's even better. So I have to reframe it or whatever. But it's interesting because you want your students to be super comfortable and you want to keep your effectiveness as a teacher and your professionalism as a teacher. And I have to say that at this point in my career, this is not too big of a challenge for me. And part of the reason is probably because I'm a lot older than my students are now. When I first started teaching, and I was in my 20s, I think it was easier for the students to push boundaries because I wasn't good at establishing boundaries. So that's something I'm mindful of at this point in my career.
Yeah, you had to try things, you had to figure it out, just like Goldilocks. And with that, we're going to get into our takeaways.
All right, well, I'm going to throw out a challenge here. Instead of doing our regular takeaways, how about we just each share one thing that we're going to take away from this episode and attempt to find a nice Goldilocks pattern within it.
Okay, well, I would say don't be afraid to try new things, but then reflect on what you did and decide what you want to take with you to use going forward. That's what's going to help you find that just right balance in many areas of teaching.
All right, mine is going to be that it is really important to trust your instincts. And when you think that you're veering one way or another away from your Goldilocks moment, to go with your flow and adjust as it works for you and for your classroom community. And Chelsea, you had mentioned teacher autonomy earlier, and it was a reminder that there are probably teachers out there who do use tech all day. And I am 100% sure that they are absolutely wonderful at it and able to leverage it in a meaningful way. And that is fantastic. Well, okay, Chelsea, I mean, it's the end of the episode, and I'm just thinking that right now, if I were to walk into a beautiful prairie field and there were 3 wells, one was, overflowing with water to the point where it was flooding the area. The other one was dry and cracked and looked like crocodile skin at the bottom, no water at all. The one that I would definitely want to choose is the one that is nicely full, but not too full, but not too dry. So there's the happy medium, there's the Goldilocks well moment.
Yes, that well sounds just right.
Thanks for listening to the EduWell podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please share it with a friend, subscribe, and leave a positive review. It helps others to find us.
Follow us on Instagram and Pinterest to help spread the word. For more inspiration, tips, and book recommendations, just head to the show notes and join the EduWell newsletter today. Until next time, be well
and do well.